We're tracking what's happening in the economy. There's been a massive plunge, as you know, in the last day or two of Bank of America. But now it's gone up a bit today because the consummate insider, the Rothschild agent, Warren Buffett, has been running around saying that he's investing heavily in it and bought a bunch of stock in it, so now it's gone up. So Mr. Wells Fargo now running over to one of the other big 6 mega banks and trying to prop it up. And a real expert on this is Nomi Prins, author of It Takes a Pillage, Behind the Bonuses, Bailouts, and Backroom Deals from Washington to Wall Street. And she's got a new book coming out. Nomi Prins, people keep calling me going, it's Naomi. No, it's Nomi, N-O-M-I, Prins, P-R-I-N-S. She, of course, was a managing director at Goldman Sachs and also ran a lot of the key groups breaking down global trends and actuaries. So quite the brain. And she joins us to go over the Bank of America situation, but also her article that's gotten a lot of attention out of the Daily Beast. I've seen other mainstream reports saying, is Blankfein about to be indicted? Because there's been some subpoenas and things. He's hired the biggest criminal defense lawyer you can hire for corporate fraud and corruption, the former big Enron lawyer. And so he may not just be worried about an SEC wrist slap. She'll break that down for us as well. So Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway invests $5 billion in Bank of America. We're going to get that inside take from her. And could Blankfein, she used to, again, be one of the big head honchos in the power structure over there at Goldman Sachs, and Nomi Prins. Nomi, thank you for joining us.
Thanks a lot for having me back, Alex.
Okay, you've got the floor. Well, what do you want to tackle first? Bank of America and all of those gyrations, the global economy, meltdown, gold, or do you want to get into Blankfein? Is he going to be going to meet up with Madoff in the big house?
It's all up there. I don't know, let's start with Buffett because, you know, she started with a $5 billion deal with Bank of America. Of course, it's related to Goldman. Buffett put a $10 billion deal together with Goldman Sachs, which is very similar to this when Goldman was facing the abyss of bankruptcy before the Fed turned it into a bank holding company instead of an investment bank and infused it with tons of capital, which has done quite well for it since then. Buffett knew that. And, you know, it seems right now he is doing the same thing, not just putting money into Bank of America for preferred stock, meaning if Bank of America fails, he's there first. He gets his money out first. That's how that deal works. And he's going to get 6% dividend interest on it in the meantime. He's betting, really, that the government will not let Bank of America fail again. Now, this is after the government has propped up Bank of America, had forced a deal where Bank of America took over Merrill Lynch, which no one hears about anymore, which had a ton of toxic assets in it, is dealing with the countrywide investigations and everything else. And the government had infused Bank of America with hundreds of billions of dollars worth of guarantees and subsidies and bailouts and everything else, a lot of which has gone away or been paid back. But that is why Bank of America has floated so long. Buffett is coming in right now and saying, you know what, even with those billions of dollars, even with the fact that Bank of America's stock is back down to where it was in early 2009 when the Fed started opening its coffers and there started being all this extra guarantee after TARP coming from the government to help it, even now that it's back at those levels, he's betting the government won't let it fail again. That after all of that money that was put in, there will be more put in, if need be, or more rules sort of fuzzied in order to get this firm, which is a zombie, which is a disaster financial institution, you know, waiting to implode, to keep it propped up. That's his bet. And you know what? Given what the government has done so far, unfortunately for the rest of us, it's a pretty good bet for Buffett. Now, even though that being said, the market went up, Bank of America stock went up on Buffett's thing, and then it basically, it kind of faltered a bit after that. So that shows us that even given that logic, even given Buffett, even given the fact that the government will not let this big bank fail, though it should, that the market doesn't believe it. That just like a question what was going on back in fall of 2008 and spring of 2009, there's a lot of pain that will still be inflicted upon us by these banks as they continue to show us that they are not stable, that they don't do business appropriately, and that they are zombie banks, and that's what's going on right now. So Buffett came in, but I think that's gonna the bet will be bad for us. I think, and good for Buffett. Buffett, of course, is also going to be hosting a big fundraiser for Obama going forward. So, I mean, I think he knows very well that the government won't let this institution fail, and that's why he's in there.
Sure. So they're just loading more of their stolen loot from derivatives and things into the bigger zombie banks, and at the same time, they think that'll prop them up. Nomi, how do you see this global financial meltdown unfolding? Because, you know, the German stocks are way down today, and gold, of course, went above 1,900 in the last few days. Clearly, we're sliding deeper into the global abyss, but the parasitic central banks, they're getting record bonuses, so I guess they're doing okay.
Well, yeah, and the central banks, you know, from the Fed to the ECB, these are institutions that are continuing to prop up the illusion that these banks are doing something good for the rest of us, or are viable, or should be helped. And what we're seeing in Europe, and what we're seeing with Bank of America and other things here, is that you can throw in all the money you want. At some point, the illusion of puffiness that cheap money creates, that those guarantees and backing creates, because it isn't real, will implode. And what's being seen right now in Europe is that the European banks, and they have the same issues that the U.S. banks had, you know, for different reasons, different timing. It unfolded sort of more slowly. But what we're seeing there now is that these institutions are simply not viable, and yet the central banks continue to dump money into them, extracting it with deals against populations, you know, inflicting austerity measures on populations in order to fund and create more debt in order to float these countries and their banking system, so that investors in these banks and senior executives in these banks will continue to get paid. That's what's going on here. That transfer of wealth to investors and to senior executives of banks by central banks, by federal institutions, continues to go on. We're now into year 3 of this. It's completely a disaster. What we're seeing unfold will continue to unfold. I've talked about this on your show. I continue to believe this. I saw a clip of myself talking about this 3.5 years ago, that this is 1929 going into the 30s. This is what we're dealing with right now. And our governments and European governments are playing into that. And it's very negative for main populations. And I don't see them changing what they're doing, which just means it will continue to get worse. There's a definite disconnect. And as long as the money isn't yours, as long as you're creating it out of thin air, that disconnect will continue to be there. And what gold is showing us is that individuals understand this, that if you're creating a currency that has no value behind it out of air, and it's being used to prop up valueless financial institutions, that's a big problem. And so in that event, you're better off going with a value that is attached to some actual real commodity, which is gold. And that's why we're seeing the gold price go up, and that's why we'll continue to see the gold price go up, because there is no viable solution coming from those that have the money to print or the money to spend, throwing good money or good printed money after bad.
Well, Nomi,
it's very annoying. It's very, you know, we talk about it could be so simple, and what is happening, and the decisions being made, and the way that money is being printed, and the way that it's being used to float a non-viable financial system is continues to implode before our eyes, and yet those in power do nothing and recognize none of this as it continues to unfold.
Well, they consciously understand what they're doing. It's not just that they fail to recognize it. They plan on imploding the global economy, consolidating it, setting up tax systems to destroy industrial bases in the West, and then basically making us all welfare slaves to their largesse. And they intend to get away with their great crimes by installing a paramilitary tyranny over us. The only question is, will they get away with that? Are we going to let them get away with this? Now let's talk about the head of Goldman Sachs, the guy that says he's doing God's work, or was that Jamie Dimon? Was it Blankfein said he's doing?
No, it was Blankfein who said he was doing God's work.
Yeah, so he's doing God's work here. And they've had Senate committees, as you know, come out and say, yes, this is all illegal. They knowingly created and packaged stuff that was totally worthless, and sold it to the world, and then held everybody hostage saying, prop us up or we'll take you down with us. And then now they've gotten the bailout money, and they've continued the same old activities and are saying, well, bail us out again while we get record bonuses. I mean, somebody has got to take the wheel of this car, or this train, away from these people, Nomi. So let's go over your article and the reports that he's hired this big lawyer.
Yeah, so basically, this April, the Senate Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations, the PSI, came out with a report, a 650-page report. It mentions Lloyd Blankfein, the CEO of Goldman, about 79 times. And about 250, 270 pages of this report is just on Goldman. The report's supposed to be about all of the abuses and crimes of the banking system at large, but it is about a third to more than that specifically on Goldman. So a fairly large chunk falls upon three major deals that Goldman did and their practices in general, whereby they knowingly, and the report's very damning. I mean, I encourage people to look at it. It's long, but it's damning. You know, they basically knowingly took crappy assets and stuffed them into client investment vehicles, into things called CDOs, and they basically didn't give all the information to their clients as to what was going on the other side, which is that they were shorting or betting against not just the market, which is what Lloyd Blankfein continues to say, that we are just market makers. We are doing our job. If some people want to short the market, we'll short it. If some people want to go long, we'll go long. If some investors wanted to take more risk, they knew what they were doing. They paid for that risk back then. They took it. They're big boys. You know, we're just doing our job. But the problem is that only works if you're not committing fraud or misleading your investors by not indicating the true value that you attribute to those assets you're stuffing into their securities. And the report, in a lot of different detail, shows emails and exchanges and internal documentation going on at Goldman that is in direct contradiction to the things that Lloyd Blankfein said in front of the Senate Subcommittee investigations last April, which is that he was just a market maker, which is that Goldman didn't have a big short on, which is that they didn't bet against their clients. Well, this report begs to differ. This report shows what we know is that this institution knew the value, not 100% as Blankfein. They were not fortune tellers, but they had more information on the value of the assets they stuffed, that they were called cats and dogs at the Senate Subcommittee, into these securities that they did not tell their clients. And that's fraud. You know, if someone sells you a car and the engine doesn't work and they don't tell, the brakes don't work and they don't tell you, and you get out of the lot and maybe you didn't try the brakes and you should have, but all of a sudden you tried and you slam into a truck, that's criminal. And that's what we have going on with Goldman. And Lloyd Blankfein was the CEO, and he also blatantly said to Congress last year that none of this was the case. And that's the crux of, I think, why he ultimately, under subpoena from the Department of Justice, went and hired a big-time defense lawyer, a guy who has represented Bernie Ebbers, who, by the way, is in jail, WorldCom CEO for 25 years, a 25-year sentence. Richard Causey, who was the senior accountant at Enron, who is also in jail, and a number of other big, high-profile criminals. And that's the guy that is now representing Lloyd Blankfein. That's not a good pack to be with.
Well, we know he's been subpoenaed. The problem is, as you've stated in your article, the SEC is a revolving door made up of crooks from Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan, Bank of America, all these big insiders. And so it came out, last week, that they destroyed thousands of documents. Anytime a whistleblower brought them stuff about, the big guys being corrupt, it got shredded, it got destroyed. We know for 11 years they covered up for Bernie Madoff. And Madoff has rightly said, hey, I did this because that's how business is done here. And to be competitive, I had to engage in fraud. This is all Ponzi schemes. Why am I the one going to jail? Well, he was lower down the totem pole. Sure, he founded NASDAQ and was high-powered, but not at that super big six bank level. So only Lloyd Blankfein and people like that are allowed to do this, in Ben Bernanke, not Madoff. We'll be right back.